Good morning. Because you're much younger than I am, you start.
Just that?
Yes.
I'm very happy to see you again here.
Pleasure.
We invited a bit of our friends,
Yes.
and so we thought we'd have a discussion. The idea, the idea of that panel started when we were having a dinner a few weeks ago, and I was telling Ray, Ray was telling me about STEP, and I was telling him, great, you've been doing STEP, but there is an idea that I've been talking to like many years ago. I've been always traveling to learn, and I can't learn much from the region when I started because people weren't heads-on talking about the problems, and I couldn't learn from that. So I used to actually travel a lot of times and meet other founders who are very vocal, and for some reason we're not that vocal in the region. We should be vocal. We should talk about failures because failures don't break you, failures build you. And that's what we need. What do you think about this?
Totally. And I think this is the right time to actually start talking about failures because the region is finally coming, region meaning in the tech space, we're finally coming through a cycle. So we've been living in you might not like what I say. We've been living a bit in a la-la land before. So la-la land is no longer here. So we're down to earth. 10 years, the industry is 10 years old, maybe 11, 12, depending on. So, and there's a cycle. And in cycles, there will be failures. And I'm talking in general about the industry, but every company has its own cycle also. So, and resilience becomes part of the story. And what do you do in terms of when things are down, when there's no boom, when there's no cash? How do you pivot when a product doesn't work? I mean, there's all sorts. I mean, look, as you said, failure is a journey. It's how you build your business. If you're an entrepreneur, a real entrepreneur, you will understand that the process of going through building a business for sustainability, meaning you're there forever, if you think of it this way, as a business, then you will understand that failure is what gets you there. So you will only learn from failure. You will not learn anything when you have too much money to build something. You will learn the most when you have the least amount of money and you stay alive. And so most of the, I'm an investor, I'm also an entrepreneur and spent my life in the first 15, 16 years when I was building Aramex. If I want to think about it, it was a series of continuous, not necessarily failures that could kill you, but failures that I've learned
would teach you.
And so you need to have the framework in your mind as an entrepreneur that this is, and probably every day, there is a teaching moment. And so what is it? How do you grab it? How do you actually take advantage of it and disseminate it across the organization? So this is not only your story. Entrepreneurship is a story of a team, of a community. And so, so absolutely. And this is the time to talk about it and be honest. And, the issue of mental wellness of entrepreneurs is a huge issue globally. And part of it, I was speaking to a common friend, I won't mention her name today, and she's still struggling. After years of her company not making it, she cannot talk about the subject. And so why not? I mean, we need to bring it out because more often than not, a lot of companies are not going to make it.
We're going to talk
Right?
about exactly. I definitely agree with that. And what's important for me today is to give examples that people can benefit from.
Right.
Because generally speaking, when I used to come to events, and it feels like the people on the stage like me right now are just telling you those are the 6 numbers how I won my lottery. Go figure out how you win. I mean, I can't use your 6 numbers and win a lottery. Tell me the how, tell me the problems. And I think let's start from a point that I took, and you just mentioned it, which is mental wellness, or for me, I call that undervaluing the mental toll that startups take on a person, and that took on me. I mean, personally, I consider myself as a strong person, in terms of emotionally, I know how to control my emotion, I know how to focus on my target. And I've been in this business for a long time. I've never been employed in my life. I've only built businesses. That's the only thing that I know.
Right.
But at one point in time, it struck me that, I pushed my team, I challenged everybody, and I challenged everybody to deliver. Because Anghami, when we started, we were trying to, I definitely remember when we started Anghami and I needed fundraising, I needed money, because, I've took a loan, me and Eddie took a loan, put money from 200K from our own money, and then we took a loan of 400K, which is something that
That's
never
before
happened.
you raised any money.
Just before I raised any money. Because that makes sense. Because in my previous business, I've always, created money and, I would grow from profits,
Right.
which is the best way possible to grow from
The
profits.
only way.
The
You have
only
to make
way.
money.
Yeah, and generally speaking, lately I see people, starting to raise money when they still have an idea, and I wonder why. But the question is, like, when you hear people raising money, when you go into the hype, when you go like everybody's raising money and everybody talking about raising money, you feel if you're building a business, you have to raise money because what others have done. And generally, this thing, when I failed multiple times, when I wasn't stubborn enough to say no to things.
No to?
No to people.
In general.
In general, because when.
So what, like investors
Example.
tell you, you need to change your strategy to do whatever.
Yeah. So basically,
Spend more money to
in
acquire more
retrospect,
clients.
When we started Anghami, the first few years is like the first time I was doing raising a round, and obviously I didn't know anything about rounds. I had bought a book, How to Be Smarter Than the Venture Capitalist by Brad Feld. It still exists. I think it's fourth version. It was the first version that I had at the time.
Yes.
And I got the first term sheet from a VC. I barely knew what VC means, right? And I looked at the book, and there is a chapter in the book that says what not to do and what to look for in the term sheet.
Right.
And I was like literally reading the term sheet, and I had a highlighter, and it was like everything was there. I mean, everything that I shouldn't be in the term sheet was there.
Yeah.
Was there in the book. And it made sense for me that no, I should not go forward with it, right?
Right.
But then again, everybody around me and thought that, I'm not making the right decision and I should actually go forward
And
with
you
it.
didn't say no.
I didn't say no. I didn't say no because I thought I understand well enough. Maybe that things in the US wouldn't apply over here. It's a different mentality. Remember, VCs at the time were VC 1.0. They never knew what was a VC. VC
We're barely emerging from 1.0.
Yeah, barely, barely emerging from that, because the VC is supposed to add value, and and the only value that they could add was money.
Look, I mean,
at the time.
and I've been in the business, and so no, we weren't adding value early on because we didn't understand the business. We didn't understand how to build businesses in the internet age at scale.
At scale.
So we were all learning. Again, the process of failure applies to VCs also, so not only to you.
It took me a while to understand that.
And we've
VCs
caused
were
failures to some
startups.
companies also. We've caused failures as investors. So I mean, we need to spell it out. So we thought we were smarter than the founders sometimes. Did you feel that some investors were smarter than you are? You don't need to talk about that. Yeah.
Most of the time, that's exactly. Especially at the beginning, it took me a while, many years, honestly.
Right.
I'm friends with a lot of VCs, and I like them just as
there's
well.
nothing wrong
They
with
didn't
VCs.
know. They didn't know at the time. I didn't know. We both make mistakes, and we didn't realize when to say no to things.
Yeah.
But obviously, you get better. Eventually, you get better. But the second problem that you inherit is the growth at any cost.
Right.
The growth at any cost is what VCs originally, still in certain circles.
But this is the Silicon Valley story, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it came to us from the Valley, and the Valley thought, if you're not spending enough, you're not doing your job.
Exactly. If you're
And so
not
we
raising
fell into
enough,
that trap.
you're not
Did we
spending
fall
enough.
into that trap?
I did. I used to say
All of
don't
us,
read-
I mean.
I used to say don't read TechCrunch, not because I don't want to learn about that, but because all of the stories of TechCrunch would work over there for some reason, because they were VC 2.0 at the time, and the startup ecosystem was 2.0, and the engineers were 2.0, and everything was 2.0, whereby we're just applying things and they didn't work. And growing without looking at the unit economics kill startups. Most startups would die from indigestion than of starvation.
Right.
So basically, and
Tamam.
we fell at that trap.
Totally.
So basically, if you don't, and for me, the direct lesson over here, I took accounting courses when I was university, and I did well, and I found them extremely boring.
But you're a techie. We have to remind people that you're a tech
I'm a
guy.
techie. I'm an engineer. I like to write code. I haven't written code for a while. I'm back to writing code for the past 3 months. I'm very happy. But the point is like I thought that accounting was silly, and I did not care about accounting. But later on, I understood that accounting and finance are very, very different.
Totally.
And finance drives your business. Finance gives you insight to drive your business.
Right.
Finance gets you to understand the unit economic cost of your business. And if you don't know the unit economic cost exactly, and you don't know the margins exactly, you just don't have a business.
Right.
You don't have a business. And others would tell me, but you know, Uber and whatever. I mean, I think Uber made 1/4 of profit after 11 years and 640 billion raised or whatever numbers. Most likely, you're not going to be in the same situation.
No, because I mean, who is able to raise that much money to be patient enough for 11 years until you get to profitability? Not many companies are going to be able to do that, because in downtimes, in a cycle, you eventually need to become sustainable. I mean, the money will run out, and your own cash generation internally is going to be the one that sustains you. I mean, is this something that goes through your mind all the time, Elie? I mean, do you? I lived it through so many startups, and it took me 16 years in the early days of Aramex to have a good night's sleep. Right? I mean,
16 years.
16 years until we were able to go public and raise some money. But these were days when there were no venture capital. We were borrowing money from here and there, and actually not thinking that at any time we could do anything in the business if it was not profitable. We were very profitable very early on to sustain ourselves because we were not able to raise money. And actually, I didn't know that you could raise money.
Exactly.
There was nobody to raise. The only people you would want to raise money from was banks. And banks are never going to give you money for anything.
They still won't give you money.
Silicon Valley Bank has an exception here, right? So, sorry about that, right?
That's free advertising, okay.
Free advertising, yes. But she's here if you want anything from her. And so, yeah, and that was a blessing. So
the blessing was
that I was able to stretch my dollar to take me as far as I can. And frugality is such a skill. And every entrepreneur needs to understand that your best skill is to be frugal. Best skill. Because life revolves around down times. It doesn't happen in good times. The good times will happen for 2-3 years, and then you're going to be hit. If you survive it, you're lucky, but frugality is a frame of mind. It's a frame of mind. Doesn't mean don't spend anywhere. It just means know exactly what to spend on. And that's the question I want to ask you. And focus.
Yeah.
Stop going all over the place. Stop thinking you're going to solve all the world's problems in what you are doing. What do you do best? What are you solving for? And keep your focus on it. You know, and again, back to my Aramex days, we went through so many products for no reason. When we were going public and the bankers looked at, products that were producing a little bit revenue here, we said, what do you actually do? Are you in the logistics business? Are you in the travel business? What do you do? Throw all this garbage out and give me your last mile business and your logistics business. And that's the only way investors are going to look at you. And that's where your unit economics matters.
So, but before moving to your question, because I want to address it, finance at the time, you had to go into, you understood your unit economics.
I didn't have a good financial guy. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but I am a logistician. So I deliver packages, right? So I didn't understand finance, but it was a blessing that I had fantastic people that taught me.
My blessing that you were
your best people are the people that are going to teach you things.
Yeah, that you hire, that teach you things, that understood.
Yeah, then you have to accept that this guy knows better than you or she. And so you have to completely give and empower so that they're also part of the team and part of the decision making, and they're contributing directly to things you don't know. It's a complementarity process.
But I presume that at one point in time, if you had a lot of money, I mean, not having a lot of money allowed you to build what you built. And in our case,
allowed me to retire.
That's a good one.
Lots of money is early on is dangerous.
Exactly. And I
Did you feel that?
Whenever, yeah, exactly. When we had lots of money, we end up, overhiring, overspending, and because there are a lot of startups that say, we have to have swag and we have to,
Was it a FOMO thing that, look at what this guy is doing, I want to do, that's the only way to do
At one point in time, recruiting engineers and retaining people meant that you had to go through all of that because it was in the air. Everybody was doing this, right? Like, it's exactly the same with remote work. When remote work started, and it's like, okay, everybody wanted remote work because we needed it, because it wasn't remote work, it was work in the time of COVID. And we went through it and we were super productive. But after, the world opened and people kept on wanting remote work because, that company over there is doing remote and that company, and I realized that no, that I let go with it because that's what everybody was doing. But then I realized we're failing. Our productivity was going, we're going down and down and down because remote work doesn't work unless you have the middle management layers. And if you want to introduce middle management layer, you suddenly have to recruit people to manage other people, right, which gets you lost in what your original purpose is. If you want to be a tight company and then you want to be a remote company means that you probably have 10% of the people doing the real work and 90% of the people around, right? And when you look at big companies, that's what ends happening. And we realized that we're focused, smaller group of people focused on a mission and getting to a point that you just mentioned. Not doing too many things at once. Right. Because at one point we went to the problem is like, why do we need to buy that SaaS service? Because I'm frugal. I understand that and I don't want to spend on many services. But then why do I want to do this? Let's build it. And then we look at inside, oh my God, I have a lot of internal services that do part of what I want, but that cost me in human attention a lot. And that is a huge mistake because we end up building a lot of nice services that do, maybe save me some cost on original capex, right, but eventually it's super tiring and it's super distraction.
I want to ask you about a common issue that entrepreneurs face. So the co-founder story, right? I mean, what's the biggest lesson there? I mean, how were you able to? I mean, you've been together how long now? The two.
Eddie and I have known Eddie for I think 24 years now.
So how does it work? I mean,
we've been co-founders for roughly 11 years.
So what's the lesson there?
One,
you must have gone through.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't love each other all the time.
No, definitely not. He's a dear friend. He's one of my closest friends, obviously. But at work, even people in the company think I'm bipolar, right? I might be bipolar, but the problem is like when my professional life and my personal life are very different, right? So I might be very good with my teammates and go drink beer, but during work times I might be the most harshest manager that I can deal with. And with Eddie, it's the same thing. But with Eddie is like we're divided. I've learned we've gone through multiple phases. So one, I think I've been blessed to have a co-founder that I can trust. That because I don't think that's easy. I think that I was blessed with this.
Did you have a conscious effort about it, or was it because of your long relationship?
Because we've been working with each other for 10 years before.
So you understood each other.
We understood.
You understood when to avoid friction.
I think yes. I think I understood.
Essential.
This is essential. I think I understood when to avoid friction. I think I understood what I'm particularly good at and what he's good at, and you
left each other.
We left each other. I think at one point in time we make mistakes, and I have to admit it, because we end up having two brains instead of having one brain working with each other complementary. So at one point in time we didn't do well for the company because we ended up having two different set of projects that different set of leaders are doing in the company, which might not be complementary.
But did this affect the wider? I mean, so how does it work when you have two founders? How does it affect the rest?
It worked pretty well when it's segmented into two different things that don't work with each other.
No
complementary, no competition. But when it ends up like you need to take resources from the company to work on a project from one of the two co-founders and the other one wanted something else, that becomes
a negotiating process, though. But
exactly.
That's healthy. And
that becomes
so you needed to prove
exactly.
why the money is needed in your side rather than there. Because the pie is small.
Once you do it in that particular mindset that you just mentioned, it works. But at one point in time, it didn't happen that way. It happened because, let's do it this way. And we just took, let's say, some resources from one part of the company to the other without having the right communication.
Right.
And then I failed. We failed, and then we fixed it. Communication
But when
is
you
the problem.
failed, did you talk about it as a failure amongst each other?
After.
Or did you just,
No.
say, okay, let's not talk about it, let's move on?
I've
was
done
that,
both of that.
it's essential. I'm talking about
yeah.
these things because
thank you for that.
so micro and so day to day, but so essential.
I think one particular problem that I'm guilty of is like sometimes not communicating. Not communicating to Eddie and not communicating to the company, right?
Yeah.
Because one thing I think I used to say at the beginning, early days of the company, we were all in a small office. We talk to each other every day. Yeah. And I used to consider I'm the chief reminding officer.
Right.
So I keep reminding people every day about what we're doing, why we're doing that.
Right.
And you keep reminding people. When you become a bigger company...
The evangelist.
Exactly.
It never ends.
If
you say it once, it doesn't mean it sinks.
So
you have to say it every single day, no matter how old the organization is. I faced it. I'll let you speak, but corporate culture, people think,
He's the older
culture
one.
is so essential. I'm older.
Yeah.
It is so essential. And I used to think, we've had workshops, we talk about who we are, what our values are. It's not one workshop. This is your job.
Continuous.
Every morning, every day, preaching who you are, what your values are, what you stand for, what this organization is about until eternity. It doesn't stop, right?
Exactly. And at one point in time, I thought, okay, we went through that. I don't have to repeat it. And then you know how I realized it? It's like, and when I went at home, I have kids. And, I tell them we should not do that thing, but they would do it. I have to repeat it and again and again. And then I realized it's like, oh my God, it's the same story. And I have to repeat it. And communication is a problem because sometimes you think you're beyond communication that there, and even with my co-founder, even with Eddie.
It's hard work.
It's hard work. And it's hard work that you need to repeat it. And another thing that I think, part of the bigger failures that I've done, I'm an engineer. Put me in, building products, and I believe that Anghami grew because of the product. I mean, at the time we did not have marketing, and it was it was very much open. The field wasn't like that right now. And I thought that always focusing on product, on engineering would solve it, right?
Right.
And it took me a while to realize that sometimes it's not about engineering. Engineering is part of, your product is part of your entire experience, but you have to talk about your product. Building something and waiting for people to discover it will not make it any better.
Yeah, but is this arrogance from engineers? I mean, are you arrogant people in general? Meaning you think you're smarter than we are? No, I'm serious.
No, that's a good point.
The chief technology officer again, I go back to Aramex. It's still around 40 years later. I used to have so many fights with the CTO, because he used to think, chief technology officer, he used to think he's much smarter than I am, but he doesn't. I would tell him, you have no idea what the client wants, but he thinks he knew. So we'd kill each other.
Yeah, I think
literally kill each other.
I have not done that.
He's still alive, though. I mean,
he's still alive.
Survived.
So practically speaking, I think, yes, because I'm on the engineering side of the team originally. Now I'm not. Now I'm all over the place.
You have to sell the product.
Originally, yeah, I think I got a bit of much ego because of the engineering, because we build, right? We build, we operate. But then one particular thing is like...
Because you're better at math.
Probably, yeah. I'm still better at math than Eddie. Yeah, I'm still better. Yeah, but basically, I realized that it took us later on. I mean, maybe the first 5 years, I didn't need to do much more marketing because organic was driving things, right?
Yeah, because you were a product that was in vogue. People wanted that product.
Exactly. People wanted it, and we were building. But then we realized that, no, it didn't work. It didn't work because we were building great features, great things, but we didn't talk about them.
People didn't know that they were there.
People didn't know that they were there, and that was our biggest
You have to
mistake.
spend money, you
It
have
took
to
us a while, and that's currently it's the biggest problem that I personally face right now when I talk to anybody. When someone wants me to mentor him on something, and they tell me what they're building, and it's amazing. They start talking about the technical, what they're building technically speaking. I'm not going to use technical words right now, but then it's like, how are you going to get out of it? And so we're going to put it on the App Store. But I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
But are you marrying the marketing people with the product people and making sure that...
The point is like you need to the one problem that we had is like the structure of the company doesn't change because you start a company with a certain structure, and it's like humans, like everything, and like companies have to evolve. Companies have to shift. The tech part might be originally on its own, the marketing part on its own, but then eventually that has to shift, that have to change. And when people right now want to build new apps, you can't build an app and put it in the store and people will discover it and it will grow revenues. And the point is like, are you growing an app or you're making a company that generates revenue to be able to grow?
Exactly.
And this is the same problems that everybody still faces till today.
So organization structures and the way you structure yourself evolves. I mean, there's no one way, right? I mean, did you spend time talking to Eddie and the team about continuously about how you're gonna how that engine works? I mean,
I didn't.
Multinationals coming working for me. They thought, oh, okay, what is this company? It's a piece of cake. But a product, a company that has a powerful brand is easy to sell. And the company that's just emerging is hard sell. You need to have people who are skilled at selling. In big corporations, with all due respect, you don't need no skills. You just mention the name and they say, okay, we're going to buy the product. You're from Microsoft? Yes, we're going to buy the product. You're from Google? We're going to buy the product. But if you come and they'll say, well, who are you? You're from the Arab world? You can't build businesses in the Arab world.
So how did you solve it? It must
I hired hustlers.
Okay, salespeople.
Yeah, but they're 50 years, they're still with me, 30, 40 years. They believed that they're building something that is going to last, and they went for the kill. They're hungrier. You need to hire hungry people, not people who have had big fat salaries and don't know how to do anything else.
So how would you hire them if you're not giving them a fat
Straight out of college.
Okay, exactly. So basically hiring people and
the current CEO of Aramex was his first job ever. This is his 30th year. He never worked anywhere else. And he learned on the job. But I had already built the product.
Right, but you learned from the job, on the job.
Totally.
Most of my engineers in Anghami till today were people who we hired from university.
And they're the ones that stuck around.
Yes, of course. They're the one that stuck around because they believe in the mission, and they're the one that learned everything in Anghami. And eventually, they went. Some of them went obviously outside of Anghami. That's just fine, but they learned in it because we've done the inverse. We've got people who've supposedly built systems and tech systems at other companies and brought them in, and it was too much unlearning to do, too much expectations because they expect to come with all the baggage that exists in a different company. And the problem is that we make that mistake multiple times.
Very difficult to shed. You carry baggage, it's with you for a long time unless you are skilled at burning that baggage.
But the
and
point
very
is
few people have that skill.
We keep on making more mistakes. It's like, and this is how it is. All businesses have common, daily mistakes that we make, and hopefully you've learned from a bit of mistakes that we shared. We'll need days to talk about a lot of more mistakes that we did.
This is the age of resilience.
Exactly, and age of controlling costs, right? And controlling costs and growing revenues and focusing about the margins. And hopefully we'll all build better businesses again in the future, and we'll be cheering for you next time around. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.